Today, we are taking a deep dive into a book that could fundamentally change the way you speak, listen, and connect with every single person in your life. The book is called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, and it was written by a clinical psychologist named Rosenberg. Now, before we go any further, I want you to think about the last time you had a disagreement. Maybe it was with your partner about chores, or with a coworker about a project deadline, or with a family member during a holiday dinner. You tried to explain your point of view. You may have even chosen your words very carefully, but somehow, things still went wrong. The other person got defensive. Perhaps voices were raised, and you both walked away feeling hurt, misunderstood, and more distant than you were before. What if the problem wasn't what you were talking about? And what if the problem wasn't that you were bad at communicating? What if the real problem was the very language you were using? A language that we are all taught is normal and even polite. This is the central and very challenging idea in nonviolent communication. Rosenberg suggests that most of us, without ever realizing it, have been educated to speak a language of conflict. It's a language of judgment, of blame, and of demand. He calls this violent communication. The most shocking part is that this type of communication often sounds perfectly ordinary. It hides in our everyday conversations, disguised as simple feedback or harmless requests. Let me give you a very clear example that is the foundation of this entire book. Imagine you want to tell someone that they have been unreliable recently. You have two ways to say this. Statement A is, "You are so unreliable." Statement B is, "I noticed that you said you would email the report on Monday, but I didn't receive it until Wednesday morning." Rosenberg shows us there is a world of difference between these two statements, and understanding this difference is the first and most critical step to changing your relationships. Statement A, "You are so unreliable," is not a fact, it is a judgment. It is an evaluation of the other person's character. The moment a person hears a judgment like this, their brain doesn't just process information, it prepares for a fight. They immediately feel the need to defend themselves by saying, "No, I'm not," or to attack back by saying, "Well, you're not so perfect either." The conversation is no longer about the report, it is now a battle of who is right and who is wrong. The chance for a real and peaceful connection is lost. Statement B, on the other hand, is a pure observation. "I noticed that you said you would email the report on Monday, but I didn't receive it until Wednesday morning." This is a statement of fact. It's like something a video camera would have recorded it. Doesn't label the person as good or bad, it simply and clearly states what happened. When a person hears an observation, they are much more likely to listen without becoming defensive. It opens the door for a real conversation about what actually happened, instead of shutting it with blame. This single distinction between a judgment and an observation is the gateway to an entirely new way of interacting with people. This book provides a simple, powerful framework that allows you to express yourself with complete honesty, but without a hint of criticism. It also teaches you how to listen differently, to hear the deep human needs that are hidden behind the words of others, even when those words sound angry or aggressive. Learning this framework is like learning a new language. It's a language of compassion, and it can give you the tools to navigate the most difficult conversations, to repair damaged trust, and to build relationships that are based on deep, mutual understanding and respect. So if you are ready to transform conflict into connection, stay with us. In this deep dive, we will unpack the entire four-step process of nonviolent communication, one piece at a time, using clear, practical examples that you can start using in your life today. In our introduction, we touched on the powerful and fundamental difference between making a judgment and making an observation. We used the example of saying, "You are so unreliable," which is a judgment, versus saying, "You said you would email the report on Monday, and I received it on Wednesday," which is a pure observation. This single shift is the bedrock of nonviolent communication. But to truly master it, we first need to understand why our default language is so often filled with judgment, criticism, and blame. It's not a personal failing, it's a type of language we have been trained to use our entire lives. Rosenberg gives this language a name. He calls it life-alienating communication. It's a way of speaking and thinking that disconnects us from our own compassionate nature and from the humanity of others. It actively blocks the creation of genuine connection. To make this concept easy to understand, Rosenberg uses a powerful animal analogy. He calls this language of judgment, jackal language. Think of a jackal. It's a predator, always looking for what's wrong, quick to attack, quick to diagnose and label. Jackal language is the language of the head. It analyzes, it criticizes, it compares, and it demands. It is the language that fuels arguments, creates defensiveness, and ultimately pushes people apart. So, what does jackal language sound like in our daily lives? Rosenberg identifies several key forms. The first, and most common, is the use of moralistic judgments. This is any statement that implies that someone is wrong or bad because their actions don't align with our own personal value system. When we say someone is lazy, stupid, selfish, or irresponsible, we are not just describing them. We are acting as a judge and finding them guilty. This language creates enemies. It boxes people into categories of good and bad, right and wrong. If someone drives faster than us, they are a maniac. If they drive slower, they are an idiot. We are constantly making these small moralistic judgments, and each one builds a tiny wall between us and the other person. The goal of nonviolent communication isn't to stop having values, it's to stop expressing those values through the language of blame and criticism. Another form of Jacko language is making comparisons. Our entire education system and many of our workplaces are built on comparison. We are graded on a curve. We are ranked against our peers for performance. We look at social media and compare our lives to the curated highlights of others. Rosenberg argues that comparison is a form of violence. It blocks compassion both for ourselves and for others. When you compare your child to their more athletic sibling, or you compare your own career progress to that of a successful friend, you are generating misery. It disconnects you from the beauty of what is and traps you in a cycle of wanting something else. Thinking in terms of comparisons is a guaranteed way to make yourself and everyone around you feel inadequate. A third, and very subtle, form of Jacko language is the denial of responsibility. This happens when we use language that obscures our own personal choice in a matter. It's the language of, I have to or I was forced to. Think of how often we say things like, I have to go to this meeting, or I have to give you a low grade because it's the school's policy. This language makes us sound like helpless victims of external forces. But the truth is, in almost every situation, we are making a choice. You don't have to go to the meeting. You are choosing to go to the meeting because you value your job, or because you want to contribute to the project. You are not forced to give a low grade by a policy. You are choosing to follow the policy because you want to keep your teaching license, or because you believe it's fair. When we say I have to, we are being dishonest with ourselves and with the listener. We are cutting ourselves off from the power of our own choices. This denial of responsibility can also sound like blaming our feelings on others. For example, saying you make me angry is a denial of responsibility. The other person's actions are a stimulus for our anger, but not the cause. The cause is our own unmet needs, which we will discuss later in this series. By saying, you make me angry, we are using Jacko language to make the other person responsible for our internal emotional state. Finally, the fourth form of Jacko language is making demands. A demand is any communication that explicitly or implicitly threatens the listener with blame or punishment if they fail to comply. It's the opposite of a true request. A demand says, do this or else. The or else might be a threat of violence, but more often it's the threat of withdrawing affection, showing disapproval, or laying on a guilt trip. Even a polite phrase like, I would appreciate it if you would clean the kitchen can be a demand. If the unspoken message is, ... and if you don't, I will be angry and resentful, and think you are a selfish person. When people hear a demand, they typically see only two options, submission or rebellion. Neither of these options creates the willing, compassionate connection that we truly want. These four things, moralistic judgments, making comparisons, denying responsibility, and making demands, are the core components of Jacko language. It is the language of violence that Rosenberg urges us to unlearn. So, what is the alternative? Rosenberg calls the alternative giraffe language. He chose the giraffe as the symbol for nonviolent communication for two beautiful reasons. First, the giraffe has the largest heart of any land animal, symbolizing the language of compassion that comes from the heart. Second, its incredibly long neck gives it a high-level perspective. It can see beyond the immediate conflict and diagnose what is really happening. It can see the bigger picture. Giraffe language, therefore, is the language of nonviolent communication. It is the language of life. The very first skill of speaking giraffe is the one we started with, learning to make pure observations, completely separate from any evaluation. This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things to do because our brains are wired to be efficient, and mixing observation with evaluation is very efficient. Saying that politician is a liar is faster and easier than saying. In 3 separate speeches this month, the politician made statements that were later fact-checked and proven to be untrue. But only the second statement, the giraffe observation, creates a foundation for a real dialogue. Let's practice this distinction because it is so important. I'll give a statement, and you can think about whether it is a jackal evaluation or a giraffe observation. What about this? My boss is a micromanager. Is that an observation? No, the word micromanager is a label, a judgment. A giraffe observation would be, in our 1-hour meeting yesterday, my boss interrupted me 4 times to ask for updates on the project. See the difference? The first one attacks his character. The second one describes specific actions that are impossible to deny. How about this one? You are always playing video games. This is a classic jackal evaluation. The word always is an exaggeration that immediately invites a defensive reaction. Like, no, I'm not. I wasn't playing them yesterday. A giraffe observation would be much more specific. I've noticed that you've spent about 3 hours playing video games each night this week. This statement is based on concrete, observable behavior. It's also important to know that even positive labels are still evaluations. Saying Susan is a great writer is a judgment. While it might be a nice one, it doesn't give Susan specific information about what she did well. It also sets you up as the judge of her work. A giraffe observation would be, the first paragraph of your report was so clear and persuasive that it immediately convinced me of your argument. This gives Susan specific, observable feedback that is far more valuable than a generic compliment. Mastering the art of observation means training yourself to be like a scientist or a video camera. You report only what you can see and hear. You avoid all words that interpret, judge, or generalize. This means being very careful with adverbs and adjectives that sneak in evaluations. For instance, instead of saying, "He responded angrily," a pure observation would be, "He threw his pen on the table, spoke in a loud voice, and said he would not discuss the matter further." Describing the actions allows the other person to connect with what happened. Rather than arguing with your interpretation of their emotional state as angry, let's put this into a real-world scenario. Imagine a couple is having a recurring issue about money, the Jacko language. Version of this conversation might start with one person saying, "You are so irresponsible with money. You spend money so frivolously." This is an attack. It's filled with judgment. Irresponsible in evaluation, frivolously. The other person will almost certainly become defensive, and the conversation will spiral into a fight about character flaws instead of the actual issue, which is financial security. Now, let's replay that opening with giraffe language. The person could start with a pure observation. "I was looking at our credit card statement from last month, and I saw that there were 5 charges from clothing stores totaling over $600. This is a statement of pure fact. There is no blame, no name-calling, and no judgment. It is simply an observation of what is." By starting the conversation this way, you create a space of safety. You are presenting a shared reality that you can both look at together. This doesn't guarantee the conversation will be easy, but it guarantees it will start on solid, neutral ground. It keeps the focus on the issue, the spending, rather than on the character of the person. This first step is the foundation for everything that follows. It requires a conscious effort to slow down and separate what we see from the stories we tell ourselves about what we see. By stripping away our evaluations, judgments, and diagnoses, we present a clean, unarguable starting point for communication. We stop creating enemies and instead create potential partners in a conversation. It's the first and most profound step in moving away from the language of violence and toward the language of connection and life. Now that we have learned how to observe the world without judgment, the next step is to look inward and learn how to talk about what's happening inside of us. In the next part, we will explore the second and equally crucial component of nonviolent communication. We will learn how to accurately identify and express our true feelings. And in the process, we'll discover why a common phrase like, "I feel like you don't listen to me," is one of the biggest communication traps we fall into. In the last part, we took a deep dive into the first step of nonviolent communication, separating observation from evaluation. We learned to use giraffe language to describe what is happening around us, like a video camera would, sticking to the facts without any of the blame, criticism, or judgment that defines Jacko language. This first step gives us a solid, neutral ground to stand on. Now that we have a clear, objective picture of what is happening outside of us, the second step of nonviolent communication asks us to turn our attention inward. It asks us to honestly identify and express what we are feeling in response to the observation we just made. This sounds deceptively simple. Most of us think we know how we feel. But Marshall Rosenberg argues that our emotional literacy is shockingly underdeveloped. We have been taught to think, analyze, and judge, but we have rarely been taught the language of our own hearts. And this leads to one of the most common and destructive communication traps in our daily lives. A trap that perfectly illustrates the difference between a real feeling and a thought disguised as a feeling. This trap is the phrase, "I feel like," or "I feel that." Think about how often we say things like, "I feel like you're not listening to me," or "I feel that this is unfair," or "I feel misunderstood." Rosenberg points out that in every single one of these cases, we are not actually expressing a feeling at all. We are expressing a thought, an opinion, or an interpretation of the other person's actions. The word "feel" is used, but it's a decoy. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. What follows the phrase, "I feel like," is a Jacko thought, an evaluation. And because it's a hidden evaluation, it puts the other person on the defensive just as quickly as a direct accusation. The moment you say, "I feel like you're not listening," the other person's brain doesn't hear about your internal state. It hears an attack on their behavior, and their immediate impulse is to reply, "Yes, I am listening." And just like that, you are disconnected. So, what is a true feeling? A true feeling is a pure emotion or a physical sensation that is happening inside your own body. It can be expressed with a single word, without referencing anyone else. Words like happy, sad, angry, scared, joyful, frustrated, overwhelmed, calm, curious, discouraged, or hopeful. These words describe your internal state. They are not a description or a judgment of someone else. Learning to speak giraffe requires us to develop a rich and nuanced vocabulary for these genuine emotions. Most of us operate with a very limited emotional palette. We are good, bad, fine, or stressed. But there is a whole universe of feeling within us. To make it clearer, nonviolent communication often separates feelings into 2 categories: the feelings we have when our needs are being met, and the feelings we have when our needs are not being met. When our needs are fulfilled, we might feel adventurous, confident, grateful, inspired, joyful, proud, relieved, or tranquil. When our needs are not being met, we might feel afraid, angry, confused, embarrassed, exhausted, hurt, lonely, pained, or tense. The goal is to get specific. Are you just angry, or are you feeling agitated, resentful, or maybe even furious? Are you just happy, or are you feeling amused, delighted, or ecstatic? The more specific you can be with your own feelings, the more clearly you can communicate your inner world to someone else. Let's go back to that critical distinction between a real feeling and a thought disguised as a feeling. The key is to check if your statement is about you, or if it's an interpretation of someone else. For example, the statement, "I feel abandoned by my friends." The word abandoned is not a pure feeling. It's an interpretation of your friend's actions. It implies they did something wrong to you. The actual pure feelings underneath that thought might be, "I feel lonely, I feel hurt, or I feel scared." Do you see the subtle but powerful shift? Saying "I feel abandoned" is a subtle accusation. Saying "I feel lonely and hurt" is a vulnerable revelation of your own heart. One invites an argument. The other invites compassion. Let's try another one. A manager says to an employee, "I feel that you're being irresponsible." This is clearly a thought, a judgment. The manager isn't sharing his own feelings. A more honest MVC approach would be for the manager to identify his actual feelings. Perhaps he feels worried about the project's deadline, or frustrated because he values accountability. Saying "I feel worried" is a completely different message than "I feel you are irresponsible." It shares the manager's personal experience without attacking the employee's character. This mistake is everywhere in our language. When we say "I feel inadequate," we are not expressing a feeling, but a judgment about ourselves. The underlying feeling might be, "I feel discouraged," or "I feel disappointed in myself." When we say, "I feel unheard," we are interpreting the actions of others. The underlying feeling might be, "I feel frustrated," or "I feel a sense of despair." The MVC process constantly pushes us to dig deeper, to go past our interpretations and land on the authentic emotion at the core of our experience. Let's apply this to a real-life scenario to see how it works in practice. Let's go back to the example of your friend who has canceled your dinner plans via text for the third time in a row. Your initial automatic jackal thoughts might be, "This is so rude. They don't respect me at all. I feel like this friendship is a one-way street. This is a storm of judgments and interpretations." Now, let's slow down and apply the first two steps of MVC. First, the observation, free of judgment. We had plans for dinner at 7 p.m. tonight. At 6 p.m., you sent a text canceling the plans. This is the third time in the last month that this has happened. This is just the data. It's what the video camera recorded. It's unarguable. Second, we turn inward to identify our true feelings. We have to push past the interpretation. "I feel like they don't care." What are the actual emotions stirring inside of us because of this situation? You might feel disappointed because you were genuinely looking forward to the connection and conversation. You might feel hurt because your desire for companionship seems to be unmet. You might even feel worried because you value the friendship and are concerned that these cancellations are a sign of it fading. Disappointed, hurt, worried. These are real feelings. They are about you, not about the other person. So now you have the first two building blocks of a giraffe message. When you text to cancel our dinner plans an hour beforehand. And this is the third time it's happened this month. That's the observation. "I feel hurt and worried." That's the feeling. Can you feel the immense difference in energy between that statement and the jackal thought? "You're so flaky. I feel like you don't care about me." The giraffe statement doesn't attack. It doesn't diagnose. It simply and vulnerably shares your reality. You are holding up a mirror to what happened and then opening a window to your heart. This approach dramatically increases the chances that your friend will be able to hear you without getting defensive. They are much more likely to respond with empathy to your hurt and worry than they are to an accusation about their character. Taking responsibility for our feelings is one of the most powerful shifts a person can make. It means accepting that other people's actions can be the stimulus for our feelings, but they are never the cause. The true cause of our feelings is something even deeper, which we will get to in the next part. For now, the key is to understand that claiming ownership of your emotions by using a clear and authentic feeling word, "I feel sad," "I feel joyful," "I feel scared," is an act of immense power and vulnerability. It stops the blame game in its tracks and opens the door for genuine human-to-human connection. So, the second step of nonviolent communication is to connect with what is alive in you and to express it as a pure feeling. It's about moving beyond our thoughts, our stories, and our interpretations, and daring to say what is truly in our hearts. We've now learned how to state what we see without judgment, using observations. And we have learned how to state what is alive in us without blame, using feelings. But this leads us to the most important question of all. Why do we feel what we feel? Why does a canceled dinner plan make us feel hurt, while for someone else it might just be a minor annoyance? The answer lies in the third, and perhaps most profound, component of nonviolent communication, the universal human needs that are the hidden source of all our feelings. In the next part, we will uncover this hidden driver behind every single human action and learn why understanding our needs is the ultimate key to unlocking empathy for ourselves and for everyone else. In our journey so far, we have learned the first two foundational steps of nonviolent communication. First, we learn to observe what is happening around us without a trace of judgment or evaluation. Second, we learn to look inside ourselves and identify the true, authentic feeling that arises in response to that observation. Being careful not to confuse our feelings with our thoughts and interpretations. We can now construct a powerful statement like, when I see the dirty dishes piled in the sink, that's the observation. I feel frustrated, that's the feeling. This is already a massive improvement over saying you're such a slob, but it leaves a critical question unanswered. Why? Why do the dishes in the sink make us feel frustrated? Why does a cancelled plan make us feel hurt? Why does a word of praise make us feel joyful? The answer to this, why, is the third and most profound step in the nonviolent communication process. It is the absolute core of Marshall Rosenberg's teachings, and understanding it can radically transform your view of yourself and every other human being. The reason we feel what we feel is because of our universal human needs. This is the engine that drives all human action. Rosenberg's most revolutionary claim is this: everything we ever do, everything we ever say, from the most saintly act of generosity to the most violent act of aggression, is simply an attempt to meet a fundamental, life-serving need. And here's the most beautiful part: these needs are universal. They are common to every single human being on the planet, regardless of their culture, their background, their age, or their gender. Whether you are talking to a CEO in a New York boardroom or a farmer in a rural village in Thailand, you are both driven by the same set of fundamental needs. Needs for things like safety, connection, respect, autonomy, and meaning. This insight is the key that unlocks compassion. Because if we can understand that behind even the most hurtful or confusing behavior of another person lies a universal need that we also share, it becomes much harder to see them as a monster. We can begin to see their humanity. To grasp this concept, we must first learn to distinguish between our needs and our strategies. This is one of the most common and tragic confusions in our language. A need is an abstract, universal quality. It is a fundamental requirement for life, like a plant needs sunlight and water. Needs are always general nouns, like connection, support, peace, autonomy, or understanding. A strategy, on the other hand, is a specific, concrete action that we take in an attempt to meet a need. We constantly mistake our preferred strategy for our actual need. For example, a person might say, "I need you to take out the trash." In the language of MVC, this is not a need. Taking out the trash is a strategy. The underlying need that this person is trying to meet might be a need for support in maintaining the household, or a need for order and cleanliness in their environment. Taking out the trash is just one of 1,000 possible strategies to meet that need for support. Maybe the need could be met by doing the dishes instead, or by hiring a cleaning service, or simply by having a conversation and feeling heard. But when we fixate on one strategy and mistake it for the need itself, we create conflict. We box ourselves into a corner where our way is the only way. Let's look at some more examples to make this crystal clear. A teenager might say, "I need a new pair of expensive sneakers." The sneakers themselves are a strategy. The underlying need might be for acceptance and belonging within their peer group. A husband might say, "I need you to stop working so much." His request for her to stop working is a strategy. The underlying need might be for connection, intimacy, or reassurance. An employee might say, "I need to get that promotion." The promotion is a strategy. The deeper needs might be for recognition of their hard work, for financial security, or for a sense of contribution to the company's mission. Understanding this difference is like being given a secret decoder ring for human behavior. When your partner is demanding that you call them more often, instead of reacting to the demanding strategy, you can get curious about the need behind it. Perhaps it's a need for connection or reassurance. When your boss is micromanaging every detail of your project, instead of seeing them as a control freak, you can guess they might have a powerful unmet need for trust or effectiveness in the outcome of the project. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it explains it in a way that allows for compassion instead of resentment. Conflict disappears when we can connect at the level of needs and then creatively brainstorm strategies that can meet everyone's needs simultaneously. Now, let's connect this back to our feelings. The relationship is simple and direct. Our feelings are the indicators of whether our needs are being met or not. Think of them as the dashboard lights in your car. When a warning light comes on, you know something needs attention. In the same way, when you experience an unpleasant feeling like anger, sadness, fear, or frustration, it's simply a signal from your body that a core need is going unmet. Conversely, when you experience pleasant feelings like joy, contentment, excitement, or peace, it's a signal that your core needs are being fulfilled. This understanding completely liberates us from the idea that other people make us feel a certain way. Our feeling is generated within us by the connection between their action and our own needs. Let's revisit the example of your boss canceling a meeting. The cancellation is the external stimulus. If you were feeling overworked and behind on other projects, this stimulus might connect to your need for rest or autonomy. In this case, you would feel relieved. However, if you had spent hours preparing for the meeting and were eager to move the project forward, the cancellation would connect to your unmet need for contribution or efficiency. In this case, you would feel frustrated or disappointed. The action was the same, but the feeling was entirely different because it was generated by a different need within you. This is the definition of emotional responsibility. Let's complete our example of the friend who canceled dinner plans. We have the first two parts of our giraffe message. Step 1, observation. When you text to cancel our dinner plans an hour beforehand, and this is the third time it's happened this month. Step 2 is about feeling. I feel really hurt and worried. Now we add the third, game-changing step of identifying the unmet need that is causing these feelings. Step 3, need. Because I am needing more connection and dependability in our friendship. Let's put that all together. When you text to cancel our dinner plans an hour beforehand. For the third time this month, I feel really hurt and worried, because I am needing more connection and dependability in our friendship. This is a statement of profound honesty and vulnerability. You are not blaming your friend. You are not calling them flaky or unreliable. You are simply showing them how their actions connect to your feelings and your deepest needs. You are revealing a precious part of your heart. You are explaining the why behind your pain. By naming universal needs like connection and dependability needs that your friend also has and understands, you make it much easier for them to empathize with your experience. You have moved the conversation from a fight about their behavior to a dialogue about the health of your relationship and the universal needs that sustain it. Learning to speak the language of needs is difficult because many of us were taught that having needs is a sign of weakness. We are told to be independent, to not be needy. Rosenberg calls this a tragic and life-alienating part of our conditioning. To be human is to have needs. Denying them doesn't make them go away. It just ensures they will be unmet, or that we will try to meet them through tragic, indirect, and often violent strategies. Owning and expressing our needs is an act of courage and the most direct path to getting them met. So now, we have the complete diagnostic part of the MVC process. We have learned to use our giraffe eyes to see what is observation, use our giraffe heart to feel what is alive in our feelings, and use our giraffe wisdom to understand the life-serving reason for that feeling of what we need. We have laid all the groundwork for a truly compassionate connection. But what do we do now? Where do we go from here? It's not enough to just tell someone we are in pain. We must also know how to ask for a solution that would make life more wonderful. In our final part, we will explore the fourth and final component of nonviolent communication, the art of making clear, positive, and doable requests that are completely free from the energy of a demand. We have now traveled through the entire diagnostic landscape of nonviolent communication. We started by learning to see the world with the clear, non-judgmental eyes of a giraffe, making pure observations about what is happening. We then turned our attention inward, learning to identify and express the authentic feelings that arise within us. And most importantly, we uncovered the deep, universal needs that are the true source of all our feelings, the engine that drives our lives. This three-step process gives us a profound and honest understanding of our own inner world. It allows us to express our reality with a vulnerability that invites connection rather than conflict. But diagnosis is not enough. Understanding our pain is powerful, but it doesn't, by itself, alleviate it. The entire purpose of this journey is to make life more wonderful, both for ourselves and for others. And to do that, we must move from understanding the problem to actively seeking a solution. This brings us to the fourth and final component of the nonviolent communication model, the art of making a clear, positive, and actionable request. This is the step that builds a bridge from our needs to the world outside, inviting others to contribute to our well-being in a way that is joyful and free from coercion. The biggest challenge in this final step is learning the crucial difference between a request and a demand. On the surface, they can sound very similar, but in terms of the energy they carry, they are worlds apart. A request is an invitation. It is an honest appeal for another person to use their power and their resources to help us meet our needs. A true request always, and without exception, leaves the other person free to say no. A no to a request is not a prelude to a fight. It is simply more information. It tells us that the strategy we proposed doesn't work for the other person, and it opens a dialogue to find a different strategy that will. A demand, on the other hand, is a threat, however subtle. A demand says, if you do not do what I ask, you will be punished. The punishment may not be physical. More often, it is the threat of blame, guilt, shame, or the withdrawal of our care and affection. When we make a demand, we are trying to get our way through fear and coercion. And as we discussed earlier, people have only two responses to a demand: submission or rebellion. Neither of these builds the willing, heartfelt connection we truly crave. You can never make someone meet your needs. You can only inspire them to want to. So, how do we know if we are making a request or a demand? The ultimate test is how we react when the other person says no. If our reaction is to get angry, to lay on a guilt trip, or to start criticizing them, then our original request was actually a demand in disguise. If our reaction is to try and understand what need is preventing them from saying yes, then we have made a true request. Our goal shifts from getting our way to understanding the other person's needs. To craft a powerful and effective request, one that is truly a giraffe request and not a hidden jackal demand, we need to follow a few clear principles. First, a request must be stated in positive action language. This means we must ask for what we do want, not what we don't want. Our brains have a difficult time processing negatives. If I tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, what is the first thing that pops into your mind? A pink elephant. In the same way, telling someone what not to do is confusing and often ineffective. It tells them what to stop, but it doesn't give them a clear picture of what to start. Let's imagine a parent is frustrated with their teenager who is always on their phone during family dinner. The jackal approach would be to say, stop being on your phone all the time. This is a negative command. An MVC request would be framed in the positive. The parent might say, "Would you be willing to put your phone in the basket on the counter during our dinner hour so we can connect?" This gives the teenager a clear, positive action to take. It replaces the unwanted behavior with a desired one. Another example, instead of saying to your partner, "I don't want you to work late every night," you could say, "Would you be willing to be home by 6:30 p.m. on at least 3 nights this week?" One is a complaint. The other is a clear, positive, and doable invitation. Second, a request must be concrete, specific, and actionable. Vague requests create confusion and make it impossible for the other person to succeed. Asking for abstract qualities like respect, support, or love is not an effective request, because it can mean 100 different things to 100 different people. We have to translate these abstract needs into concrete behaviors. For instance, a person might feel their need for respect is not being met in their relationship. The vague, ineffective request would be, "I want you to respect me more." What does that actually mean in practice? The other person is left guessing. A concrete MVC request would be much more specific. It might be, when we are discussing a disagreement, "Would you be willing to let me finish my sentences before you start speaking?" That is a specific, observable action. The other person knows exactly what is being asked of them, or take the need for support. Instead of saying, "I need more support around the house," a concrete request would be, "Would you be willing to be responsible for cooking dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays?" This clarity makes it much easier for the other person to say yes, because they know exactly what they are agreeing to. Now, let's put all 4 pieces of the model together using our ongoing example of the friend who keeps canceling dinner plans. We have already formulated the first 3 steps: observation, feeling, and need. When you text to cancel our dinner plans an hour beforehand, and this is the 3rd time it's happened this month, I feel really hurt and worried, because my deep needs for connection and dependability in our friendship are not being met. Now we add the final crucial step, the request. What is a concrete and positive action that could help meet our need for connection and dependability? We could make a request like this. Request: would you be willing to have a conversation with me right now about what's been going on? And see if we can find a way to connect that feels good and reliable for both of us. Let's analyze this request. It's positive, it's concrete, and immediate. And it's truly a request, not a demand. It opens the door for a collaborative dialogue. It's not about forcing your friend to promise they will never cancel again. It's about working together to find a strategy that honors both your need for connection and whatever need is causing them to cancel. Maybe they are overwhelmed at work and have a need for rest. Maybe they are anxious and have a need for safety. By making a request that invites dialogue, you can uncover these competing needs and find a solution together. Perhaps you decide to switch from dinners to weekend coffee, or to have a phone call instead. The strategy is flexible. The commitment to meeting both sets of needs is what matters. It is also important to distinguish between 2 types of requests. Sometimes, before we ask for a specific action, we first need to make a connection request. The purpose of a connection request is to check if our message has been heard and understood. After sharing our observation, feeling, and need, we might be unsure if the other person is still with us. So, we can ask something like, "To make sure I'm being clear, would you be willing to tell me back what you just heard me say?" Or, to check in on their emotional state, we could ask, "I'm curious how you feel hearing what I just shared." These connection requests are incredibly powerful. They slow down the conversation and ensure that you are both on the same page before you try to solve the problem. They build a foundation of empathy upon which a solution can be built. Once the connection is established, you can then move to an action request, which is a request for a specific strategy to meet your need, like the one we made in the dinner example. Learning to make effective requests is a skill that takes practice. It requires us to be brave enough to ask for what we want, clear enough to articulate it in a positive and concrete way, and open enough to hear no without making the other person wrong. It is the final, essential step that turns nonviolent communication from a passive tool of analysis into an active force for positive change in our lives. It is how we build a world where giving comes from the heart, and where everyone's needs have a chance to be met. This 4-step dance of observation, feeling, need, and request is a language of life, a language that can heal relationships, dissolve conflict, and bring us closer to the compassionate, connected world we all long for.